We are diving into an organization that is just, well, it's defined by a fundamental paradox, the ring.
Mm.
On one hand, you've got this sprawling, lawless criminal syndicate. It's filled with thieves, murderers, exiles.
Worst of the worst, really.
Exactly. But on the other hand, it fiercely prides itself on professional conduct, on structure, and this idea of internal civility. So the question is, how do you maintain order when your entire purpose is dedicated to chaos?
And that paradox, that's really the engine of our deep dive today. Our source material gives us this fascinatingly forensic account of the whole syndicate. We're treating the ring, the boss, Kurai, Karst, Huck, not as abstract figures, but as real players.
Real people in a high-stakes chronicle of calculated crime.
Right. And so our mission here is to really extract the rules that govern their trade, to analyze the extreme, almost operatic paranoia of their leader, and I think this is the most compelling part, to examine the intensely emotional, the deeply human and often violent motivations that are driving two of their most valuable members.
And we have to start with the tension that just permeates every single transaction within the ring. It's captured perfectly by this cynical observation from Idea, one of the rogues in the organization.
What does she say?
She says, "This place runs foul with thieves, cutthroats, and loudmouths. I am likely the only one here that would not betray you for coin."
And right there, that statement defines the inherent instability of the whole environment. The ring is this collection of hyper-skilled individuals whose natural instinct is self-preservation.
And betrayal.
And betrayal, exactly.
Yeah.
Yet under Kurai's guidance, they're all striving for this idea of professional lawlessness. The entire structural dilemma of the ring rests in that gap between those two things.
Yeah.
How do you force profound internal trust onto a group that is just, it's designed for external dishonesty?
Okay, let's unpack that concept, professional lawlessness, because Kurai's description of the ring's whole ethos is, it's chillingly efficient.
Kurai is definitely the voice of that efficiency. He asserts that the ring operates outside the law, but he stresses, and this is key, that lawlessness does not exclude civility and does not need to create chaos.
So they aren't interested in just, messy, unprofitable anarchy.
And not at all. This is about peak operational efficiency. If a client is determined to acquire a certain item, Kurai's argument is that it's better for a professional read, meaning the ring, to handle it. Their goal is, and I'm quoting here, to avoid unnecessary violence and confusion.
So if you look at it through a purely transactional lens, the ring is basically a service organization. It's for high-end, bespoke, illicit acquisitions. And they use this incredibly sanitized language, like referring to their work as solving the misallocation of resources.
That phrase, misallocation of resources, that is the corporate justification for theft, isn't it?
It is.
It's intellectual distance wrapped up in professional jargon. And this structure, it really benefits two primary groups. First, obviously, the clients who want a clean job done quietly, without all the catastrophic fallout of some amateur crew botching it.
And the second group.
The ring itself. It allows them to maintain control, to maintain a clean reputation, as paradoxical as that sounds, and it ensures a consistent revenue stream because they're skimming a small, calculated cut from every single assignment. It's not just a syndicate, it's a highly refined crime management ecosystem.
But okay, if they're so focused on control and efficiency, how does that square with Adia's statement? That everyone is liable to betray you for coin. Kurai is trying to impose civility, but the personnel are clearly, well, they're resisting it.
That's the critical friction point. The structural rules exist precisely because the people are inherently untrustworthy. Kurai knows these individuals are motivated by pure self-interest.
Right.
So, therefore, the structure has to be so robust, and it's backed by consequences from the boss, that self-interest ends up aligning with organizational interest. The rules are basically a prophylactic measure against the inevitable betrayal.
Speaking of structure, their entire business model pivots away from objective financial value, it's a remarkable nuance for a group that deals in theft. Kurai talks about how clients hire the ring based on subjective value.
And this is where the ring really elevates its game beyond common banditry. They're not just hitting bank vaults. They focus on the emotional or the strategic importance of an item, regardless of its monetary worth. A contract might be for a, quote, worthless trinket, just because it holds sentimental significance.
Or a precious heirloom.
Exactly, where the value is purely defined by lineage, or maybe it's the final piece in a lifelong collection. The value is defined by the client's psychology, not the market's gold rate.
But that raises a pretty profound risk question. How does the ring, which is so committed to profitability and risk management, How do they vet these subjective contracts? How do they ensure that a theft motivated by pure spite, like just knowing the original owner no longer has it, is actually worth the operational risk?
Well, Kurai has to function as this highly specialized risk assessor. The profit margin on a worthless trinket can't come from the item's resale. It has to come from the fee charged to the client
A fee that covers the difficulty.
and the risk. If the item is sought purely out of spite, then the client has to pay an emotional premium for that. This kind of flexibility allows them to penetrate structures where traditional thieves wouldn't even bother looking, and that increases their operational niche.
And they enforce this flexibility with incredibly few constraints on what they're actually hired to get. They make few moral judgments.
The only constraints are purely pragmatic, organizational. The item must be not breathing, which, eliminates kidnapping or slavery as potential income streams. It maintains a degree of operational cleanliness.
Okay.
And crucially, the job must not be liable to put the entire ring at risk. This just confirms that organizational stability and long-term survival are always prioritized over any one lucrative but highly risky target. They will sacrifice immediate profit to protect the infrastructure.
Now let's look at the critical internal infrastructure that's designed to manage that inherent instability Adia pointed out. Markers and favors. This is their currency for managing interpersonal debt.
Markers are the internal legal code of this lawless society. In a group where, cash might facilitate an immediate betrayal, markers track favors owed between members. This ensures that no one is taking advantage of or being taken advantage of by any other ring member.
So it's a transparent, regulated debt system.
An essential one, yes. It allows a volatile professional like Karst to owe a precise, quantifiable debt to a trusted professional like Kura. It substitutes the external societal law, which they all reject, with an internal contractual obligation, which they absolutely rely upon.
How does that actually manifest? Like if two members get into a dispute over a job, say one feels the other didn't pull their weight, who arbitrates the marker dispute?
The system implies a higher authority. It's likely Kurai, or even the boss himself, who serves as the final arbiter. The purpose of the marker is to quantify and formalize an obligation, and that removes the ambiguity that leads to bloody chaos.
It provides proof.
It provides proof.
Yeah.
Without that transparent system, every professional disagreement ends in violence. Kurai even notes that the system is necessary for managing people whose talents are not intellectual in nature, which is a polite way of saying it's designed to keep brute strength and impulsivity channeled toward external contracts, not internal feuds.
And this structural commitment, it's sealed with a ritual oath binding them internally. The ring binds us all, and to all within I shall do no harm.
That oath is the essential social contract. It's a mechanism for enforcing mandatory internal peace. You swear not to harm anyone within the ring so that you can collectively turn your aggression outward onto the world. The power dynamic is crystal clear. Internal loyalty isn't a matter of moral choice or friendship. It is a mandatory business requirement for their survival.
So they're leveraging fear and professional interest to create a stable market.
A stable, albeit very dark, market.
Beyond just profiting from contracts, Kuai also reveals that the ring uses incredibly sensitive materials, like blueprints of heavily protected locations for non-monetary purposes, professional development.
Precisely. There are skilled professionals, and, professionals need to hone their craft. These heavily protected locations are treated as high-stakes training grounds opportunities for them to test the limits of their skills.
But someone has to provide those.
And the boss provides the blueprints and resources, but always for a price, ensuring that even talent acquisition and training feeds back into the system of markers and earned debt.
Yeah.
It just reinforces that cycle of professional growth being tied to organizational commitment.
And the source of this incredible talent pool is, well, it's a massive irony. Kurai actually credits the authority they all fled. Dominus.
The acknowledgement of debt to their enemy is an incredible insight into the political landscape. Kurai states that the ring owes a great debt to him. Without his overzealous exilings, the ring would not have a rich pool of talent to draw upon.
So Dominus's tyranny wasn't just cruel, it was politically stupid.
Massively so. He expelled skilled, useful people who were simply inconvenient specialists in security, lockpicking, infiltration, combat. He created a perfectly specialized, highly trained, and most importantly, deeply disenfranchised labor pool who had absolutely nowhere else to turn.
He essentially outsourced his talent acquisition to the very regime he was fighting.
Absolutely. Then the boss Having learned the tactics of anonymity and mythos from Dominus himself, just absorbed these rejected pieces of the establishment to build a sophisticated counter-establishment. The ring is the dark, professional echo of the failures of the ruling power.
That structural analysis sets the perfect stage for the man who is the singular anchor of this entire operation, the boss. Let's shift our deep dive and begin deconstructing this figure who exists more as a tactical myth than an actual man.
His reputation is the foundation of his rule. Adia summarizes the paradox beautifully. He rules through deception, obfuscation, and manipulation, yet she immediately confirms that he adheres strictly to agreements.
Which she calls a form of honor, which I can respect.
Right. So he's dishonest in his method, a master manipulator,
Yeah.
but entirely honest in contract. That predictability in transactional matters is what allows the entire organization to function without just, killing itself.
He is the ultimate unknown quantity, the man of 1,000 faces, or no face, depending on who you ask. And Faustus, who is described as a connoisseur of the truth, suggests that the wild stories circulating about the boss are actually underestimations of reality.
Faustus says he hasn't heard a story with the wondrous ring to it that only true stories have, yet his sources confirm the truth is even stranger. This isn't accidental. The boss actively cultivates this deliberate, self-sustaining mythos.
He learned from Dominus.
Exactly. Like Dominus, he understands that being unknowable is the ultimate form of control. If his enemies, and for that matter his allies, can't pin down his history, they can't predict his weaknesses, his motives, or his limits. The mystique is his shield.
But our source material does pull back the curtain just a little bit with two conflicting, yet very revealing origin stories that seem to define his core characteristics. Let's start with the story of the stable boy, recounted by Tibbs.
This story is so critical because it shows the boss's nature wasn't born from privilege, but from calculated high-stakes risk assessment. The job wasn't just simple theft, it was complex market manipulation. He was paid a week's wages to poison the favorite chariot horse of the Octavius family, and he took the payment.
But he didn't stop there. He orchestrated a second layer of manipulation, betraying the very man who hired him in the first place.
He suspected the job was a poison, a messy business. So he turns on his contractor, poisons him as well, and then takes his own wages and bets it all on the other strong horse.
Who then won the race because the favorite was dead.
Right. He ensured two outcomes that amplified his profit exponentially. He got paid for the crime, and he profited massively on the resulting chaos and the outcome of the race, taking home a killing.
It reveals the immediate birth of the strategic manipulator. Calculation, a willingness to betray any temporary partner, and an obsession with controlling multiple variables to maximize the return.
He lost his gainful employment, but he gained a fortune and a deep understanding that controlling the outcome is more important than just executing the job.
Okay, so if that story defines his calculation, the second one, recounted by Karst, defines his contempt and what seems like a political statement. The boss, as the bored aristocrat who entered the first Bank of Theopolis.
This anecdote shows a profound shift in motivation from survival to pure disruption. He was already living very comfortably, but he sought a challenge that transcended mere wealth accumulation. He didn't steal currency. He destroyed financial order itself.
He went into the bank, which was owned by the ruling elite, the Maxius, Octavius, and various families, and just systematically confused their fortunes.
Moved the Octavius family fortunes into the Maxius deposit box. Split the various riches across every small safe he could open. He mixed it all up like it were caught in the tides.
The physical act was chaos, but the psychological impact was just devastating. But the ultimate move of contempt was finding the records, the paper ledger of deposits and withdrawals, and setting them on fire.
The destruction of the records is so much more devastating than the loss of any physical coin. It's an act of pure financial terrorism against the establishment.
Exactly. When the elite families came back, they found not just confusion, but zero proof of ownership. The entire foundation of trust and accountability that the ruling financial class depended on was just obliterated. This shows the boss is motivated not just by profit, but by the ability to sow irreversible chaos in the central structures of authority that he holds in contempt.
He attacks the system itself, not just its vaults.
That kind of ambition requires absolute trust from an inner circle. Wakano notes that the loyalty between the boss and Kurai is a lifetime supply.
That loyalty is exceptional, and it's protected by an air of threat. Kurai actively shields the boss's true history, warning Wakano to stop asking questions, else I end up like the last barber.
Wow.
Yeah. It confirms the boss's anonymity is actively and violently maintained by his closest allies. That loyalty is the most valuable currency in the ring, and you can't track it with a marker.
Yet for all the talk of ruthlessness and manipulation, we get this surprising moment of tenderness in the banter between Kurai and Tibbs about the boss.
This is the crucial humanizing detail. When Tibbs asks how the boss is doing, Kurai responds, busy, stressed, worried for the safety of those in his care. Tibbs calls him a good man, and Kurai just agrees. The best.
That really complicates the image of the cold kingpin.
It does. He's invested in his people. He carried the immense operational stress and concern for their well-being. This protective, almost paternalistic side is what secures that deep, lifetime loyalty from people like Kurai and Huck.
But this protective instinct manifests in ways that are deeply rooted in his paranoia. This brings us to Talina's account of the boss's domicile rules. This is where his paranoia becomes physical policy.
These rules define an environment of forced, absolute physical control. The mandate is strict. No boots, cloaks, coats, hats, slacks, or dresses. Undergarments are strongly discouraged.
And guests are given a sleeveless robe for privacy.
The sleeveless robe is just brilliant and terrifying in its simplicity. It's not a gesture. It eliminates every single possible place to conceal a weapon, knives in boots, poison in hems, projectile darts in a cuff. The guest is rendered physically harmless and exposed.
So he sees clothing as a threat vector, and he eliminates it entirely.
Precisely. And furthermore, the approach rules are explicit. Never approach him from behind, the side, or above.
Which prevents any surprise attack. Considering he reportedly lives underground, he has successfully sealed off all three physical dimensions of a surprise attack.
And this is the core psychological insight here. The boss, who rules through deception, mythos, and constant obfuscation, demands the absolute inverse from those in his presence: complete, verifiable physical transparency. He knows better than anyone how easily the structure of trust can be manipulated.
He requires vulnerability because he trusts nothing.
Exactly. His extreme security measures are a physical testament to the dangerous world he created by betraying others first. He has to prevent the stable boy version of himself from appearing in his home.
That sets the stage beautifully for the highly volatile individuals who operate within this system. Let's pivot to the chronicle of Karst the Lockpick, whose quest for justice reveals a lock inside the man himself.
Karst embodies the kind of pure professional talent the ring covets. He chose utility over academics, boasting that he put his youth to better use, acquiring immense skill. He can pick just about any lock you're likely to come across.
So he presents as hard, cold professionalism.
He does. Yet Kurai, who is such a keen observer, he already notes the flaw. Karst is not as tough as he believes. That assessment immediately flags the emotional fragility beneath that highly polished exterior.
And that veneer is just violently stripped away in the stolen lockpicks contract, which was a deeply personal mission driven by trauma.
The wound was twofold and foundational. His old crew beat him half to death, and they stole his prized heirloom picks, his granddaddy's. The loss wasn't just physical property. It was the mechanism that defined his identity and guaranteed his safety.
He even implies the loss of the picks directly led to his exile.
He does. He says, if I had had him when the law came for me, I probably wouldn't be here. The physical theft of the picks represented the theft of his future, his professional means, and his connection to his lineage.
The picks were literally the key to his life. So he commits ring resources to track down the crew, and he finally recovers his tools. But the relief is, it's short-lived.
This is the critical psychological pivot. He stares at the recovered picks, the physical manifestation of his identity, and he realizes the depth of the betrayal has created a scar that mere retrieval can't heal. He admits, I thought having these picks back would make me feel whole again, but, well, it's not your problem, rookie. Not yet.
The lock inside me, as he calls it, remains unpicked.
And it's festering. He realized the wound wasn't external theft, it was internal damage. And if his antique lockpicks can't open that internal lock, he knows exactly what can. Personalized professional revenge.
The mission shifts entirely from property retrieval to active vengeance.
Revenge becomes the professional mandate. He targets a former crewmate, a man living in the luxury that Karst believes should have been his. And the method of vengeance is cold, terrifying, and deeply personalized. Instead of a quick, efficient murder, they leave a gift, a highly specific toxin.
But why choose that? A prolonged, agonizing psychological torment when the ring claims to favor efficiency and avoid unnecessary violence.
Because for Karst, the goal isn't merely death, it's proportional psychological suffering. The toxin causes these slow, agonizing effects. Lightheadedness, extreme paranoia. The target hears and sees things that aren't there.
It's awful.
It is. It's followed by a tingling that builds into unbearable pain, and then finally, cardiac arrest. This drawn-out, paranoia-inducing method mirrors Karst's own feeling of slow, painful psychological corrosion and betrayal when his life was stolen. He is professionally inflicting the internal wound he suffered.
And the fact that the ring allows the specific cruelty shows the boss is willing to manage these extreme personal consequences.
As long as it's professional and doesn't threaten the syndicate's stability, it's an efficient warning shot. It says, don't betray the ring. We don't just kill you quickly. We tailor your death to your specific crime against us.
But the vengeance narrative isn't fully resolved until the credit for the hard work is protected. When a rival starts taking credit for the poisoning, Karst can't let that stand.
And this is the moment where the professional code overrides the personal closure. Stealing property led to his downfall, but stealing his professional reputation is unforgivable. Karst declares, it's one thing to steal a man's property, but to steal a man's hard work, no, I ain't gonna let that stand.
The professional slight is as serious as the personal betrayal.
So to remedy this, they leave a little present at the rival's home. One of Karst's prized lockpicks, dipped in the same toxin. It's an unambiguous signature.
He used his professional identity to eliminate the two figures who stole his identity.
And only then does he find his peace. He finds resolution not through passive retrieval, but through active professional violence. He declares, I do believe I feel whole again. The toxic message is clear. Don't steal from a thief. Karst solidifies his position within the ring by moving from victim to an active agent of agonizing vengeance.
That journey is compelling. Now he moves to Huck, whose story is driven not by cold vengeance, but by devastating righteous grief, anchored by duty and debt.
Huck is the archetypal soldier. He served 5 years in the Oria 3rd, the blackguard, and was dishonorably discharged. Crucially, though, he views that dishonorable discharge as an honor, which signals a deep disillusionment with the military machine itself.
And now he sees the ring as his true family.
His loyalty to the boss is absolute, and it's born of gratitude and deep necessity. He owes the boss his life. After his discharge, he was unemployable, a highly skilled veteran with a black mark, unwanted by the established world. The boss intervened, providing housing, income, structure.
It's the paternalistic genius of the boss. He fills the void left by the system that discarded them.
Right. This loyalty isn't bought with money. It's earned through providing dignity and opportunity, where the official world provided only condemnation.
But Huck's transition into the ring wasn't smooth. He's a volatile asset, forcing Kurai to conduct regular mental health check-ins.
Kurai's check-in is so specific and targeted. How are you feeling? Mentally. And Huck admits, still a bit uneven, still getting angry over little things. This confirms a history of post-service instability and violence.
So the boss is providing genuine psychological support.
He is, but he maintains a firm line. If Huck harms any ring members again, he will be asked to leave. It demonstrates the boss's dual role as both caretaker and risk manager. He values Huck's talent, but he will not sacrifice internal stability for one man's rage.
And the support goes beyond just verbal encouragement. The boss is covering the costs for Huck to search for old acquaintances. This is pure investment in Huck's mental well-being, disconnected from any immediate contract.
That financial support for a purely personal quest just cements the family dynamic. The boss invests in Huck's personal resolution, understanding that resolving past trauma stabilizes the asset. It creates a depth of loyalty that markers alone could never achieve.
The man Huck is searching for is Enoch, his brother, who Huck believed was called up to some rumored elite strike force under Piety.
Right. So Huck needed to break into the Blackguard records to find his deployment location, eager to reconnect and maybe even welcome Enoch into the ring.
But the discovery Huck makes in those records is it's absolutely devastating. It's a total subversion of that honorable service narrative.
The file confirms the worst of Templar experimentation. Enoch was moved to an unspecified research unit and died just 1 month later from a severe reaction to subdermal augmentations.
That technical military language.
It just obscures an atrocity, which Huck immediately translates with raw, furious clarity. They tried to turn him into a goddamn gemling and killed him in the process. The rage shifts instantly from a generalized military disillusionment to a specific, focused fury aimed directly at the Templar leadership. Piety, Dominus, Gravitius, the whole lot of them.
The system he once served committed an atrocity against his brother.
The disillusionment is complete and absolute. Enoch didn't die honorably. Right. He was murdered by the very organization that promised to uplift him. This institutional betrayal fuels Huck's sense of injustice far more profoundly than his own dishonorable discharge ever could have.
And the betrayal extends tragically to Enoch's family. They were kept in the dark, believing he was still on active duty.
That lie, that calculated silence by the Templars, is what seals Huck's commitment to moral action. The records don't even list a burial place, which leads Huck to the heartbreaking conclusion of where to look: the cremation tunnels beneath the city.
So his final goal becomes tragic but profoundly redemptive.
Right. Finding some tangible trace service records and tags to deliver to Enoch's mom and dad, just to give them the truth and some peace.
Huck describes Enoch as the sort of man whose oath to protect and preserve informed everything he did. His final act is to fulfill Enoch's own oath to his family.
Exactly. He recognizes they can't save Enoch now, but by risking his life to retrieve that physical evidence, Huck finds a measure of purpose in his devastating loss. He shifts his loyalty from mere gratitude for a job to becoming an active agent fighting the duper corruption that killed his brother. His life of lawlessness within the ring is now the only moral choice he has left.
So let's synthesize these powerful contradictory themes. We have an organization built on efficiency and transactional honor, led by a man defined by paranoia and deception, who is simultaneously managing cold, calculated vengeance
That's Karst.
and devastating righteous grief. That's Huck.
The ring exists in a state of carefully managed volatility. The boss is effectively a risk manager, a commander, and a highly selective father figure. He has to balance Karst's need for that agonizing, specialized revenge, which serves as a kind of professional advertising, with Huck's potentially chaotic, deeply emotional quest against the very tyranny the ring opposes.
The greatest strength and weakness of the syndicate lie in these deeply human, volatile relationships.
Entirely. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, their lawlessness is a reaction to the greater, more insidious lawlessness of the powerful elite Damas's exilings, the blackguard's deadly experimentation. The organization offers this structured, dark sanctuary where extreme personal consequences can be mitigated or managed.
The boss doesn't just hire rogues, he shepherds damaged people.
He does. He actively provides resources for personal resolution, which solidifies a loyalty that no amount of pure coin could ever buy. It's unsettling, though, to realize that their form of professional lawlessness involves such deliberate, personalized cruelty as with Karst, yet also these profound acts of redemptive duty as with Huck. It's efficient, but it's certainly not painless civility.
So we've established that the boss's ultimate physical fear is being approached from behind, the side, or above. He requires absolute physical vulnerability from those in his presence. Given his commitment to deception, to obfuscation and paranoia, and his history of strategic betrayal, what is the single foundational truth about himself that he is most terrified of being exposed? And what does the extreme nature of his security tell us about the person he was before he became the myth?
Well, that's the core vulnerability he has to protect above all else, isn't it? His rule rests on the illusion of the boss, the man of 1,000 faces. He learned the power of mythos from Dominus, the stable boy who betrayed his employer, the aristocrat who destroyed financial order. These are actions, not identities. What he fears, I think, is not a physical threat that can be blocked by a sleeveless robe, but the exposure of a simple, non-mythical origin story that reveals a moment of critical, non-calculated weakness.
We're in need.
Or a need, something that defines him as dependent or vulnerable. The extreme nature of his security suggests that the man before the myth was likely profoundly desperate, entirely dependent on chance, and perhaps once desperately reliant on someone who ultimately betrayed him. The greatest secret he protects is likely a truth that makes him small again, stripping away the necessary illusion and leaving only the man who started with nothing but a bet and a poisoned horse. He has to be protected from his own history,